Nice to have you with us this Sunday morning. Our guests in studio, Joe Murphy and Brian Brook from Murphy Battista LLP, personal injury lawyers here in Vancouver. Gentlemen, I'd like to talk a little bit about sports injuries. This is something we've been talking about, brain injuries and spinal cord injuries. Usually, certainly the firm Joe handles a lot of car accident victims and that sort of thing. But what about sports injuries for both adults and children? We see professional sports leagues, for example, at least paying lip service to being more concerned about their athletes and the injuries, specifically brain injuries and concussions. Football is supposed to be paying a little more attention. Hockey claims to be doing the same, although I frankly don't believe them. But let's talk about injuries incurred during athletic outings.
Well, Sterling, there's obviously many injuries that arise out of sports.
Yeah.
Rugby, football, hockey, skiing, snowboarding, a variety of things. Bicycling, bike parks, bike schools, especially when you take a bike and put it on a mountain. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
So the only time you have a claim, though, a lawsuit that arises out of a sports injury, is when you can show that someone failed to take certain steps that could have and should have been taken to avoid this happening. So, for instance, if I put my child in a ski school at any of the mountains, they're required to have helmets.
Yes.
And that's good. But there was a time when that was preferred but not required. When schools go on school trips, those can have huge potential for danger. And I had a tragic case a few years ago involving a 15-year-old boy from China here in Vancouver attending a private school. And the school took these kids, mostly Asian kids that were living at the school, and they took them to a lake up by Whistler, and they let them swim in the lake. And this kid didn't really know how to swim very well, and he drowned. He died.
Oh, boy.
And that was a case where if a school's going to take children, students on outings, they've got to make sure that it's safe, reasonably safe. And if it's not, they've got to look at how can we change it. So if I'm saying to a kid you can swim in the lake, the first thing I'm going to do is find out how well they can swim.
Right.
And if they can't swim, they're not going.
Right.
And then I'm going to find out which parts of the lake are deep and shallow, and I may restrict it. And then I'm going to have people there watching them. So this was a kid who went swimming, and within minutes he was under. And there was no one watching him, and he was left under for, 10, 15 minutes, and he was air-vac'd to the hospital and died a day or two later. So that was a case that we advanced a claim. The mother, and this was an only child, which is typical in China, the only child had died, and it was a terrible tragedy.
Of course.
But this was totally avoidable because you look at it and say, how and why did this happen? If I'm a kid playing hockey, I expect that I might be injured if I'm checked into the boards or fall.
Can I stop you for just a second, though? Because I'm interested. Now you've really piqued my curiosity. You, acting for the parents, sued the school, presumably, for negligence. Would that be the legal term?
Yes.
Did you win?
Yes.
Okay.
The case was settled, but from early on, it was understood that the school was liable. There's a number of basic rules when a school takes kids on a trip, and I think there's about 8 of them, and this school had broken, I think, every one of those rules. These kids should have never been up at that lake. None of them really knew how to swim, and this was a lake that had a shallow beach and then a big drop-off. And you take 30, 40 kids, you know they're going to scatter along a lake. There's no way you can watch them.
Well, let's
just a recipe for disaster.
It certainly is, and we are, beginning of April. It's the last section of the school year. This is the time of year when schools of all descriptions get those kids out in those yellow buses. It's school trip season, and so typically, when Junior his class is going to go out on a field trip, he brings something home for you to sign, Brian. Some kind of permission slip saying, yes, I acknowledge that my son is going on this trip with his school, and it's okay by his mom and me, sign here, and he takes it to school. What sort of legal adventure have you just taken upon yourself by signing your child's permission slip for a school trip?
Well, Sterling, the whole issue of waivers is something that causes me as a parent a lot of difficulty. And an adult who engages in any kind of sort of sporting activity, I look at waivers as being something that's really problematic. A lot of people, when they sign these forms, either on behalf of kids or on their own behalf, don't ever envision that they're going to find themselves badly injured as a consequence of the activity that they're signing up for.
Right. And yet, of course, your kid's standing there in front of you going, "But mom or dad, you gotta sign it. I can't go, and everybody's going, and I want to go too."
Yeah, I can't do it unless you sign it away.
Exactly.
I don't think that the courts really find that when a parent signs a waiver on behalf of a child that is necessarily binding, and I think
I don't think the parent doesn't have the legal right to do anything to give up the child's rights. The parent cannot do that.
So why do schools put parents in this untenable position?
They want to get the parent's consent, which the parent can give.
Right.
But when they want the parent to sign a waiver of the child's rights, so if something happens, there's not going to be a lawsuit, the parent simply doesn't have the legal authority to do that.
Okay, so
and the child doesn't either.
Okay, so as parents, what do we look for on that permission form that Junior brings home from school that we should be reluctant to sign? I give my permission for the school trip. Okay, that's what they ask you to do. But what about any other fine print that they sort of throw in there and then ask you to sign?
Sterling, unless the form says, and I as a parent agree to indemnify the school for any claim made by the child arising out of the accident, I say to my friends who phone me, I said, sign it. It means nothing.
Okay.
It means nothing.
And your kid will go completely flip out if you don't sign it, because then you're denying them an outing in the yellow bus.
There's no reason for the parents not to sign them because they have no legal meaning.
Okay, but you have a big "but" expression on your face, Brian.
I think that the real issue is, as a parent, making sure you understand what activity your kid's actually going to be participating in.
Fair ball.
And making sure that the people who are organizing it and supervising it are properly trained and that they are organized enough to do it safely.
Right.
That's, I think, the obligation of every parent. To make sure that what your kid is going to be exposed to is going to be something that's generally safe and is being conducted in a responsible and safe fashion. The problem with a lot of outfits that are providing these adventure activities, and I don't mean just schools, but zip lining, mountain biking skill camps and things like that.
I'm a bobsled guy. I've been down the Olympic bobsled a few times. I signed my life away to do that, and happily.
And the problem is that the waivers that have been crafted for these companies to use and that everybody has to sign on to.
Oh, they won't let you on. You bet.
They've been crafted very, very carefully by very bright lawyers who know what they're doing. And the courts in British Columbia have generally upheld the validity of those waivers. If you sign on a waiver and you sign away your rights and you knew there was writing on it that it impacted your rights to sue if you were injured, you're pretty much between a rock and a hard place if you're badly injured during that activity. It's the saddest thing, I think, is that you have this industry where people are paying good money to do adventure sports, whether it's zip lining or hang gliding or doing a mountain bike adventure park or whatever. These activities are dangerous to start off with.
Yeah.
The problem is that, Sterling, the waiver almost gives these companies who are operating in this area of industry a free ride. If anything, the existence of a bulletproof waiver almost gives them every excuse they need to slack off in terms of their safety standards, the quality of the staff that they're providing, the training, the quality of the equipment, because at the end of the day, they know that if somebody's injured, even if it's as a result of negligence of one of their staff or crappy equipment, they're going to get off.
Because the way the waiver was written in the first place.
And the way our courts have treated waivers in British Columbia.
Okay, we need to take a quick break. Our guests, Joe Murphy and Brian Brook from Murphy Battista LLP. This is The Law Show here on AM 650. And we're back with more right after this quick timeout.